So we're going to talk about here what like the Masterclass has said is Introduction to Cybersecurity Fundamentals. Jonathan, I would appreciate your help if there's any questions that they're put in the chat, that somebody identify them to me, since I had to share it in the full screen. Obviously, related to cybersecurity, what we're talking about here is data protection, and data protection is key. So the first thing, there's many different ways to approach cybersecurity, but the first thing we're going to approach, whether it be as an individual or as a security officer, as mentioned, there are some security officers on this call, is to inventory and get an idea of what type of data we want to protect. That could be, sort of social security numbers, which is sensitive. That could be bank account information that could be sensitive and that's personal, or it could be company information, whether that is proprietary in nature or some other form. And the reason is because in the digital world, unfortunately, and I was just giving a presentation before this presentation about threats and risks, is that there are threats that present risk for organizations, individuals, and the like about privacy. And here are the most common threats. We're talking about cyber attacks, data breaches, or ransomware. And some could be similar, but in today's world, they are typically categorized separately, particularly because something like ransomware has many different effects. Ransomware could be encrypting data on a computer and it not leave. Ransomware could be removing data, encrypting it, and sort of holding it ransom for individuals. Data breaches could be something similar in nature, where the information might be removed and held from a data breach, but the information also might be kept at that location where it was attacked and copied and presented or made available in its unintended form. And then cyber attacks could be something like one of the two, data breach or ransomware, or cyber attack could be like a denial of service, or could be some other action that could cause one of the other unintentional risk to present itself. So what is a cyber attack? You'll see here, cyber attacks cost lots of money. In recent cases, and MGM Resorts cost about $100 million. And that's just probably still an estimate of this type of cyber attack impact. But primarily it's a malicious, or could be malicious and or deliberate attempt to compromise the CIA, which is the triad related to cybersecurity, confidentiality, integrity, and availability of, here it says computer systems, networks, and digital information, but what primarily we're talking about is data. And why I say that is because without a data, computer systems might be somewhat invaluable. And same thing for networks, right? So these computer systems and networks are what provide access to and support data. But what we're primarily talking about here is compromise of data. And what is a data breach? So on this diagram here, you'll see a lot of different data breaches that in this case, the picture, and I'm going to show a picture of this next in a much larger form, where events of 30,000 records or more. But what a data breach does is it's an event or an incident which results in unauthorized access of a certain type of information. And that could be confidential in nature. That could be other types in nature as well. But primarily a data breach is sort of unauthorized access to private, confidential, or sensitive information. In this case, we could sort of bundle it together and call it confidential. So here are some of that picture blown up. Here are some of larger events, 30,000 records or more. And these events, if you look, are growing in nature. They're not necessarily shrinking in the number of events, but also not in the number of records affected. And while one might think that uh, if you surmise that all these records could be overlapped and similar, it's not always the case. Every single company takes in some type of data and makes it proprietary or private in their own nature. And therefore, we need to do a better job to protect this information at every company or in every situation to make sure that proprietary form of similar data is not leaked to the wrong people. Some cases that data could be valuable to that company. In other cases, that data could be valuable to that individuals who has that data leaked. So once we have data, we talked about another form of a cyber attack called ransomware. And I talked a little bit about ransomware, but its definition, as stated here, is really about encrypting a victim's files or locking them, i.e., locking the users out of access to their own computer systems. So, what does that mean? It's really, in most cases, it's either a ransom or as a result of locking out, it's a denial of service. There was a recent event in the news in the United States about urgent care and hospital facilities being locked out of their systems. And the result is that in that case, when someone was calling for assistance, the computer systems that supported those emergency care, primarily ambulance systems, was unavailable. Therefore, the ambulance system could not respond to the urgent situation, someone either needing to get to the hospital or someone needing an EMT on site for assistance, and it caused denial of service. As a result, what happens is when users are locked out of their systems, or in effect locked out of using their data, which is basically the core of the system, most attackers will demand a ransom payment. And then usually you'll find that in a form of some type of cryptocurrency. And the reason is cryptocurrency could be not as easily traced in exchange for unlocking access to the system or returning control of the data to the users of the system, right? So that puts the company obviously back in action and allows them to carry out their business. We would think that obviously urgent care or schools or things that have direct impact to our daily lives would be types of systems we want to protect the best. But I'm sure some of the people on this call will probably share some of their own concerns about the systems that they're helping to support, how those are, how well they are protected, and what are the challenges they face on a daily basis to achieve a higher level of availability. Here's a little data from Gartner, right? Basically stating that we see a significant increase in the number of cyber attacks causing an effect to daily life, right? And we could talk about cyber and social engineering attacks, but the reality is when there's a cyber attack that occurs, whether it be denial of service, whether that be ransomware or anything other, that causes some type of impact to daily uses of computer systems. And as a result, either someone has lost something, i.e., time in their day, or access to a service, or potentially they are going to lose something, whether that be paying a ransom or anything to that effect. Um, the challenge here is that we're seeing on a regular basis the effect to human life increasing. And whether that be the example that I provided in regards to ambulance response or urgent care response or anything similar, is that most of these cases we have not put value on the loss of that service and the impact of that service being unavailable. But I think even based on what Gartner's saying, some of the industry awareness is taking a different look at some of that, and we'll probably see over the next few years, if then 5 or 10 years, an increase in our control or our awareness of how to control and more solidify access to those services and prevent the effect of cyber attacks. So what does that mean for folks in general? Well, and like I said, just before this seminar, I gave a small seminar here in an office. And I think what we're learning is we have to constantly learn about cybersecurity and become what we call cyber warriors. So day in and day out, there's going to be things we need to learn to get us up to our current baseline knowledge. But every single day going forward, we're probably going to be able to learn about something new that affects. And here's another example, is that one of the examples I just gave in this presentation was, I don't know, as a result of COVID, when people went to a restaurant, they were not given a paper or a booklet type menu anymore. So most restaurants provided a barcode on the table, scan the barcode to see the menu for the restaurant. Well, a lot of people got accustomed to that. Now, one effect from a cybersecurity point of view is, I gave the example where, well, what happens if you go to pay the parking meter and the code on top, the barcode? Well, what happens if someone sticks another barcode on top that takes someone to a sort of unintentional website that looks like you would be paying the parking meter, but now someone has stolen the funds and made you at risk for getting a ticket? I think there's a lot more situations like this are recurring on a daily basis, and there's still a lot more of these types of situations that we're going to want to learn about. So what is this information security? It's kind of referred to a general topic, more shortened to InfoSec. It's the practice of protecting these systems, or as a result of digital information. An example I gave about the parking meters, we're trying to protect the funds that someone would pay for the service or fee that they're charged to park in that location. Because they've been affected by unauthorized access. They went to a different website that took the money via disclosure or alteration, right? Someone changed the barcode to reduce the level of confidentiality, affect its integrity. Even though the availability was there, you did not get the service in that case that you were wanting to get. And this is where the term information security, InfoSec, where it comes to live. In my mind, information security is actually a larger term than just cybersecurity, because cybersecurity deals with your digital assets. Security will deal with your physical and digital assets. So those online and offline assets that you want to protect from security threats. And the goal would be to reduce overall security risk. So what is cybersecurity? Again, we're talking about cyber threats, right? And protecting digital assets. And it refers to every aspect of protecting digital assets and its associated employees in an organization from digital or cyber threats. And what is its objective? Well, we talked about confidentiality, integrity, and availability before, but the objective is really to ensure a high level of confidentiality, ensure a high level of integrity, ensure a high level of availability. Where one of these factors or components of this triad are affected, we have reduced cybersecurity. So if usually we refer to confidentiality in regards to privacy, so that we would enforce that by controlling authorized access to data. We usually refer to integrity as maintaining data integrity, and whereby the property of information that we've recorded is accurate. It remains accurate even if it is changed, and is complete and consistent for its useful purpose, right? So a good example of that, we might have a database, and a database might have certain data about an individual. Well, one day, David, myself, my way certain weight. Maybe I weigh 200 pounds today. Well, tomorrow I might weigh 199 pounds. And if that data changes each day, that accurate data each day to its level of completeness should be maintained. So if certain information doesn't have integrity, we would assume that if day one, David is recorded as having 200 pounds, well, if that remains in that database for its lifetime, it's it's very unlikely that that is the case, right? So we want to maintain our level and integrity, even if the data changes. And then the third category would be availability, is that we would want to make sure that data is accessible to its useful and correct users. So with these three, confidentiality, integrity, availability, we have a level of cybersecurity, and we could define and classify them under these categories. Who are the key players? Well, when we're talking about cybersecurity, the key players somebody would think about are, number one, is just general hackers, right? Because those are the people we're trying to keep out. But in some cases, we use this term ethical hackers as people who are hacking for good to help us support cybersecurity. Then, of course, you have the individuals who run the systems, like security administrators. You have the people who help to assess the system, security analysts. You have teams that respond to cybersecurity issues, and they will be called our incident response team or incident response team members. And we have policymakers, compliance officers. Of course, we have end users who are trying to use those systems. And we might have regulatory bodies like government agencies. And to support them, we have companies, whether they be MSSPs or other individuals who are there to assist either from a staffing point of view or a tooling or another supportive role capability. What are common threats that we see in cybersecurity? Well, obviously, we see malware, and that's been around for some time. Used to be called viruses, maybe Trojan horses, things of that nature. What's become prominent for the last 5 years is phishing and things like spear phishing, which is targeted phishing. What's sort of becoming more mainstream now, from an awareness point of view, is ransomware. What's been around for a sort of significant amount of time, even before cybersecurity became a term, is denial of service. Sort of a simple aspect of that would be, from an availability point of view, if you're running a website and the website doesn't work because someone uploaded a file, well, when the software was not correctly able to handle that file and caused the site to go down, we've had a case of denial of service. Now we have a case where, if you want to layer on some more threats, like malware, you might have a malware-induced file that you're trying to upload that causes that site to go down. And, things are getting obviously more advanced in that nature. We have this case of social engineering, which is a very broad category. We have these issues of zero-day exploits, which got popular with things like Adobe, but are applicable now to all software, or our awareness is now applicable to all software. And we have this thing about man in the middle, where someone might capture usernames and passwords, and we might not even know that. There's all these common areas that we could talk about. And who do we have? Well, we have the threat actor, right? Someone who is a malicious person trying to do bad things. And we have, they could be nation states. They could be general cybersecurity criminals. They could be hacktivists, and they could have different levels of motivation. Even nation states could be geopolitical in nature, but maybe they're also looking for profit to support their geopolitical efforts. All these things sort of come into this now advanced realm of cybersecurity. And these are all areas that, if you get involved with cybersecurity, you can learn much about and understand how they might have motivational components or motivational aspects, so that you can target your approach to cybersecurity to make sure you reduce the threat as much as possible. So what can you do? Or what can all of us do? obviously we can work on starting with the basics. Um, don't share the things that you don't need to share, right? In a lot of cases in the past, people would share a password because it was easier than setting up their own account, or someone was able to maintain their privacy by using someone else's password. Or in the case of things like Netflix, people were able to share services. Well, it's really not useful from a cybersecurity point of view to be able to share your service, because even in the case of Netflix, I think it used to be where if you shared your account with 5 people, and if multiple people logged in at the same time, you get different levels of service availability, whether you be locked out, blocked, those types of things. It was might save you $5 a month, but you didn't get the level of availability that you needed before. And be careful what you share, because if you shared your password with somebody else, what prevents them from sharing it with someone else? You want to kind of use some type of MFA, and you'll see that the industry has moved from 2FA to MFA, because now having more than one additional factor will help you, especially in the case around SMS. SMS has been proven somewhat to be not 100% secure, right? SMS can fall victim to even man in the middle. So having multiple factors or multiple ways to authenticate or identify yourself can be very helpful to prevent yourself from being compromised. And you can see here the stat from Microsoft that says implementing MFA can make you almost 100%, 99 point something or 99% less likely to get compromised. Be aware of where you are and how and what you're doing where you are. So if you're working in a coffee shop, if you're working in a hotel, an airport, using public Wi-Fi, be aware of who can see your screen and what network you are working on. Uh, you'll see here the stat that says public hotspots are more susceptible to malicious activity. That's possible, and there's ways you could sort of help secure yourself better. But now, even your own public, or not public, even your own private hotspot on your phone, or what's traditionally used as like a MiFi, uh, the data costs have come down. And while it might be easy to use a public hotspot, it also might be more effective to use your phone's Wi-Fi or MiFi and make sure no one else is using that, so you can ensure at least the connection to your internet provider is as secure as it could be. All right, so we touched on a lot of topics. Here we're going to introduce the idea of jobs in cybersecurity, because there's going to be obviously a lot of things like we talked about to help work on, and not one person can solve all cybersecurity challenges. According to IC Squared, which is the organization that helps to deliver and manage certain cybersecurity credentialing. I have a CISSP by IC Squared, so I'm very familiar with that as an organization. You'll see here what are the skills that are currently being looked for. So, as somebody in cybersecurity, you're going to need some cloud computing security capabilities or skills, obviously communication skills to work with users and other um, stakeholders in the cybersecurity realm. Know a little bit about risk assessment, analysis, and management of risks. Be able to perform security analysis, some knowledge about security engineering, some knowledge about governance, risk management, and compliance, maybe some knowledge about application security, system administration, quite possibly SecOps or security operations. And what's popular is identity and access management, and what are now new flavors of identity and access management, IAM, or you might have heard the term CIAM, or other terms similar that have sort of broadened the scope of identity and access management. What is the general salary? Well, for someone in cybersecurity, and it depends on obviously the company you're working for, your level of skill, your responsibilities, things of that nature. we're talking about maybe $100,000 as an annual salary being an average, somewhere in the low of 70,000 and the high of 150,000 makes a lot of sense for what someone as a cybersecurity analyst might be making as a salary in the United States. And this information was gathered from Indeed. So it seems like an attractive career. Seems like it has a lot of skills and responsibilities to acquire and to utilize. How would you get started? That's where CyberWarrior comes in.